I first heard the legend in a chipped mug tavern on the west quay of Sildarhaven, the sort of place where rope-burned hands cradle rum the colour of dusk, and every story is salted twice. A boatswain with a voice like ripped canvas leaned toward me and said, "You're a shipwright, aren't you? Then you ought to listen close." He lowered his voice until it was almost drowned by the wind raking the shutters, the saga of the bronze mermaid choir whose harmonies weld broken ship hulls beneath stormy seas. It's no fancy tale. They're real, and they're down there, singing right now. I laughed with the casual cruelty of someone who has never needed miracles. Bronze mermaids singing metalsmiths? Nonsense. Yet the phrase lodged in my mind the way a splinter hides beneath a fingernail. I was 29, a naval engineer recently made redundant by a consortium that had decided automation, not artisans, would assemble the next fleet. I had come to Sildar to accept a salvage contract on the Erinea hospital vessel, snapped in two by Typhoon Gallus, rumoured to rest in pieces on the Nereid shelf. My task was to assess her viability for raising, or at least retrieve, the medical archives sealed in her keel. Practical work, measurable goals. Magic had no place on my checklist. Still, on the night before we sailed, I dreamed of bronze bodies glimmering like hammered moons beneath roaring water, their throats pouring ribbons of sound that curved and cooled like solder. When dawn stole the dream, an ache lingered behind my sternum, the ache of something unfinished. 3 days later, the research cutter Boreal reached the coordinates where Irene's distress beacon had last flared. The sea was restless but not violent, its slate-coloured waves capped with nervous lace. I directed the crew to lower the ROV through a rectangular hatch in the aft deck. As its cameras flickered to life, gloom opened around them like cathedral doors. We passed through turbid strata, where plankton sparked and died, then entered the broad serenity of deep water. At 240 metres, the wreck appeared, a blackened shape split along the midline, her starboard half canted like a wounded bird's wing. I stared at the monitor, noting fracture angles, rivet patterns, stress halos. To my surprise, some edges looked melted. Not jagged nor torn, but fused, as if run through a giant's welding torch. I frowned and ordered a sweep. The cameras caught something that shouldn't have been there, a faint braid of light slipping across the torn deck. It wasn't metallic reflection, more like the afterglow of embers hidden inside smoke. Sound chattered over the hydrophones. A chord, low and sustained, throbbed inside my headset. Engineers know the language of metal, the way hull plates hum in sympathetic resonance when a propeller passes a certain threshold. But this was no mechanical resonance. It was melodic, shifting. "Music, probably current dragging the ROV frame," said Anders, my sonar tech, though he didn't sound convinced. "Maybe." I made a note, but the splinter under the fingernail began to throb. That night, long after the watch changed, I returned alone to the control station. I played back the audio capture, isolating layers as one would separate threads. Beneath the main chord lay delicate intervals, fifths and sevenths intertwining, then melting into something else. Something neither major nor minor, but alive. I boosted the gain. The notes blossomed into a choir, distant, yet intimate, voices forged of water and bronze. The tavern yarn resurfaced, harmonies that weld broken ship hulls. I tried to swallow a laugh and found my throat too dry. Dawn arrived, shrouded in low cloud. I donned my dive suit, ignoring protocol that forbade a chief engineer from descending before the ROV completed mapping. I told Anders I needed visual confirmation of hull metallurgy. I expected an argument. I did not expect him to nod solemnly and hand me the tether spool. His eyes held the sheen of someone who had also heard strange music and wanted answers. The water was a chilled glove around my body. I guided myself down the descent line, pulse ticking louder than my rebreather. The sea dimmed from grey to bruise blue to near black. At 70 metres, bioluminescent worms fizzed like green punctuation, I kept my torch off to save power, and, if I'm honest, to remain unseen by whatever shared this depth. My dive computer flashed 110 meters when I first sensed vibration in my sternum, a steady, rhythmic pressure akin to standing beside an organ's bass pipes. The light appeared before the wreck did, a filamentous lattice trailing away from the Irene's severed starboard flank. I gripped the handrail Fame had once anchored lifeboats to, and stared. The lattice pulsed golden, then cooled to teal, each flicker synchronized with the vibrations. Then I saw them. They hovered in a half-circle beneath the demolished infirmary deck. 13 figures, each a burnished copper green, each shaped like a woman from waist to crown, and a long, sinuous tail from waist to tip. Yet they were not simply statues come to life. Their faces shifted with currents. Land and sea features merged. One bore barnacle ridges across her brow like jeweled diadems. Another wore coral polyps as epaulets. Where skin would be soft, they were hammered plates overlapping like fish scales. Where hair should flow, filaments of bronze wire entwined with seaweed, waving as if in slow applause. Their mouths were open, and from them issued the music. I pressed myself against the crippled bulkhead, heart thundering. One mermaid raised her hand. Her fingertips, delicate and cruel, glowed white-hot. She touched a jagged steel rib that jutted from the deck. It flared, liquefied, and curved inward, closing the wound. Another voice swelled, and a diffuse green flame licked along a crack, zipping it shut. The hull healed itself beneath a choral lullaby. A small part of me, the engineer, catalogued metallurgical impossibilities. No slag, no arc spatter, no shielding gas. The rest of me was kneeling in spirit, reverent and terrified. My exhaled bubbles betrayed me. They twirled upward, sparkling in torchlight. 13 heads turned as one. The singing muted but did not stop. Now it was sotto voce, a murmured council. The mermaids floated toward me, tails undulating. I wanted to kick free, to flee into dark water, but the music poured calm through my marrow. They halted a meter away. The tallest spoke, though her lips barely moved. The words arrived inside my skull rather than my ears, polished yet aged, like bells exhumed from silt. Child of the surface, why do you spy upon our labour? I searched for speech through the scuba mouthpiece, found only foam. I removed it, trusting record depths be damned. I'm Mara, naval engineer. Idiotic introduction. I came to salvage the Irene, and found her being salvaged already, another voice said, higher in timbre. We mend, not steal. I see that. Salt stung my throat. What are you? Forgive me. Who are you? The mermaids parted, revealing a patch of intact hull where insignia once gleamed. Upon it was etched a sigil, a trident crossed by a hammer. We are the choir of Caligo, the first replied, forged in the age when storm gods walked visibly upon waves. Our bronze was poured from the melted weapons of a king who wished his violence undone. We shape our songs so no sailor drowns of cloven iron. I thought of the boatswain relating the tavern legend. He had not exaggerated. He had merely lacked vocabulary. My world thinks you a myth, I said. Most myths prefer it so, a third voice chimed. She had nacreous eyes without pupils. Silence preserves what noise would corrupt. I understood the implication. Keep their secret. Yet questions swarmed like pilot fish. You fused steel with music. How? They led me closer to the still liquid scene they had repaired. The bronze mermaid pressed her palm against it. Notes vibrated through her limbs. I felt the whole reciprocate, as if metal had echo chambers. As if metal had echo. All things possess resonant longing, she said. Find the note that matches a tear, sing it whole, and the tear forgets itself. A simple sentence, but it rearranged my perception of engineering. If materials could be persuaded rather than forced, she tilted her head. The Erene carried healers. Her purpose was mercy. We honor that purpose by making her death gentle. I thought of the salvage rights contract sealed in my seabed gear case. Monies promised, shareholders assured. Will you raise her? She chooses to rest. We ensure she rests in one piece. The choir resumed singing, louder now. The hull under my glove felt warm, breathing. Then something shifted in the waters above. A second ROV descended, its thrusters whining. Anders's voice crackled in my comm. Mara, what's your status? Your vitals spiked. The choir's voices wavered. Several mermaids recoiled. The tall leader gripped my shoulder, surprisingly light. The watchers must flee. Our harmony cannot defend against greed. Anders, I whispered. Abort. Now. I'll explain later. Static. Then. Negative. We've got anomalous thermal readings. Command wants proof. A sharp discord cut the water like shattered glass. The mermaid's eyes blazed. The leader spoke inside me. If they intrude, bloodshed will follow. We refuse violence, but others lurk. I remembered charts marking this shelf as pirate-hunted waters. Unlicensed scavengers monitored comms, ready to pounce on discoveries. If the Boreal lingered, she'd draw them. Give me a sign, I begged. Something to convince my team to leave. The leader considered, tail coiling. At last she unsheathed a single scale from beneath her collarbone, an oval of bronze no bigger than a locket, etched with flowing script. She sealed it in a bubble of air that gleamed pearly, then extended it toward my chest. Take this. Sing to it when you reach light. I cupped the bubble. It adhered to my glove like gelatin. Thank you. Remember us, truthfully, and you will aid more ships than you betray. Her gaze softened. I sensed dismissal. The choir turned, voices rising, weaving fresh ribbons of fire along the torn keel. I replaced my mouthpiece, secured the scale pouch, and ascended, heart hammered to an offbeat measure. Breaking the surface felt like birth into chaos. Alarms shrieked, men shouted. A black speck on the horizon resolved into a fast skiff too small for the Boreal's registry, too swift for fishing. Unflagged vessel approaching, Anders reported. Fear cracked his calm, probably scrap raiders. I dried my mask and sprinted to the bridge. Captain Imani's knuckles were pale on the wheel. They broadcast demands, turnover coordinates, something about the Singing Forge. What haven't you told me? Everything, I thought. My throat tasted of brine and secrecy. They're picking up the resonance from below. We need to kill all active sonars, silent run, weigh, anchor, without finishing the survey. Especially without finishing it. I withdrew the bronze scale in its shimmering air pouch. Captain, trust me or doom us. Those raiders will gut us for a rumor. I didn't wait for agreement. I climbed the aft ladder to the highest deck, wind needling my suit. Waves slapped iron, impatient. The skiff cut closer, hull scarred, men at mounted harpoons, tools for puncturing steel, not whales. I held the scale aloft, remembering the leader's instruction. Sing. I am no vocalist, but desperation finds keys unknown. I matched the root note I'd heard in the wreck, humming first, then letting the syllable bloom. The scale vibrated, amplifying my warble until the air shimmered. Sound rolled across the water like a low bell. The skiff's prow struck an invisible wall. Its momentum skidded sideways. Men tumbled. Harpoons sparked as if meeting unseen stone. Inside that note was warning, maybe promise. The raiders cursed, throttled reverse engines and veered off. The wall faded with the last overtone. Silence fell, save for the panting crew. Captain Imani stared at me as though I'd sprouted gills. Explain. I offered the simplest truth. A choir of bronze mermaids guards the Irene. We owe them distance. I expected disbelief, mutiny. Instead, Anders murmured, I heard them in the hydrophones, I believe. Belief spread like a contagion of wonder. The captain tapped a finger on the helm. Fine, We strike west to the Dalestream Channel. The logs will show structural instability, no salvage viability. Agreed? Nods all around. Paperwork would wash away facts. Myths would sink where they belonged. That evening, under cloud-raked stars, I sat alone on deck and turned the scale in my hands. Its bubble had vanished, yet the metal stayed untarnished. If I pressed it to my ear, I caught faint harmonics, a reminder, a promise. I considered my career prospects. Without salvage revenue, I'd be poorer. Yet the ache behind my sternum was gone. In its place glowed a quiet oath. During the month-long voyage back to Silderhaven, I began to write. Schematics of sonic metallurgy filled my notebook. Fractal frequency matrices, choral waveguides that could coax metal fibers to knit. I knew I could never duplicate the magic, but perhaps I could translate a fragment, improve hull repair, reduce deaths at sea. Pages became chapters. At the top of each I inscribed a single line, a dedication and encryption. The saga of the bronze mermaid choir whose harmonies weld broken ship hulls beneath stormy seas. Anyone who believed would read further. Skeptics would snort and skip. Perfect camouflage. 6 months passed. My savings starved, yet I declined contracts that smelled of greed. One rainy morning I mailed packets of research to coastal shipyards known for humane labour, unsigned, save a symbol, a trident crossed by a hammer. Rumours sprouted. Experimental acoustic forges, rivetless patching techniques. Some called it prophecy, others fraud. I remained silent. Then, on the anniversary of the Irene's sinking, a parcel appeared at my dormitory door. No return address. Inside lay a dagger-length shard of metal, half bronze, half steel, fused along a seam so flawless microscopes could not find the bond. Beneath it, a strand of kelp braided with copper wire and a note in rust-red ink. Your memory keeps us whole. Our song keeps you safe. I held the shard to my ear. It hummed the same root note, low and eternal. From that day forward, whenever storms raged against the harbour walls and distress flares lit the horizon, I listened. Often the wind carried a melody just beyond mortal octave, and I knew the choir of Caligo was at work. Stitching wounds the sea tore open. The world above might never see them, but ships limped home bearing welds that glowed faintly in moonlight, and sailors whispered of music thrumming through their keels like sympathetic hearts. I returned once more to the Nereid Shelf, years later, aboard a humanitarian relief vessel named Orin. Orin was a volunteers gang. Hundreds of them, or 1,000, that travelled 250 miles away. They travelled to humanitarian relief vessel named Orin. Our mission: deliver supplies to cyclone-struck archipelagos. Mid-voyage, a rogue wave shredded our bulbous bow. Water exploded through the forward hold. Panic rippled. The captain called, "Abandon ship." But I asked for 5 minutes. I walked to the flooding compartment, bronze scale round my neck. I sang the root note, then the 5th, weaving the interval I had practiced nightly. Through the sluicing water, a distant choir answered. The sea calmed within the hold, not ceased, but listened. Shapes emerged through the breach, familiar copper-green bodies glowing like submerged lanterns. They aligned around the torn steel, their harmony radiant. I joined, voice cracking, but they accepted every imperfect pitch. The hull warmed, hissed, and sealed itself as if zipping shut an invisible corset. When they were done, one mermaid brushed her tail against my boot, a gesture half greeting, half goodbye. Their leader, perhaps the same, or perhaps they shift roles, rested her palm on the new seam. "Now your people will believe in possibility," she spoke within me. I bowed, though water lapped my knees. "Will you ever come above?" "Above lies rust and rumour, below is our home." She paused. "But song passes any border." With that, the choir dissolved into deeper darkness. Orin sailed on, patched and whole. Crewmen found no weld lines, only smooth metal where jagged steel had been. Reporters barked for explanations. The captain cited rapid cure epoxies, military secrets. Yet late at night, some seamen swore they heard women singing in the bilge, a lullaby of bronze timbre. My voyage continues still, partnering with shipyards that believe in acoustic metallurgy, campaigning for safer hull standards, narrating to any receptive ear the story of impossible healers. I always start the same way, sitting in a corner of some salt-stained tavern, levelling my gaze at skeptics. You're a sailor, aren't you? Then you ought to listen close. Because the saga of the bronze mermaid choir whose harmonies weld broken ship hulls beneath stormy seas is not a bedtime myth. It is a covenant between those who live by water and those who live within it, between failure and hope. And whenever thunder cracks and hull plates shudder, I place a hand upon the nearest beam and hum a low chord, trusting the sea to answer.